Becky Elshani was born December 27, 1985, and was one of 10 siblings. When she was 22 years old, she lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with her on-again, off-again boyfriend Daniel Derriere. The reason for the on-again, off-again is because they apparently had a very troubled and volatile relationship. In 2007, they were arguing about phone calls her ex-husband made to Becky, and she ended up being arrested for assault after punching Daniel in the face. Daniel was then arrested for assault months after because Becky claimed he had used a stun gun on her nearly 20 times, but that case was later dismissed. Once, while the two were broken up, Becky began dating her ex-husband, Wesley. During this time, Daniel became angry and allegedly hacked into her MySpace account and posted inappropriate pictures of her. However, even after this incident, Daniel and her would reconcile. On March 29, 2008, they were visiting one of Becky's sister's home in Colorado Springs when the couple got into another argument. Her sister stated that Daniel started yelling at her, and Becky kept saying she didn't want to leave. Her sister kept telling her to stay, but Daniel insisted that she leave with him. At 1:15 a.m., she would finally leave her sister's home with Daniel. A few hours later, Daniel was suspiciously spotted in his 4Runner in Woodland Park in Teller County, Colorado. On the evening of March 31st, police went to do a welfare check on Becky and went to their apartment in the 6000 block of Twin Oaks Drive. When the officers approached the apartment, they heard a gunshot. Inside, they found the deceased body of Daniel. He had committed suicide as soon as he saw the police approaching. However, there was no sign of Becky at the scene and no indications of a struggle in the apartment. Daniel was scheduled to go to court a couple days after he killed himself and faced charges of harassment and computer crime charges from the incident when he hacked Becky's MySpace account. Daniel's car was eventually discovered in Teller County, and blood found inside the vehicle was later determined to be that of Becky's. However, a search of the park turned up no indication of Becky's whereabouts. Her ex-husband was ruled out as a suspect in her disappearance, but Daniel remains a suspect, and many people believe that Becky met with foul play at the hands of him after they left her sister's house. According to her friends, Daniel had previously threatened to kill Becky and then himself. He was afraid she was seeing her ex-husband and warned that if he couldn't have her, no one could. Although her family doesn't believe she is still alive, they continue to search for answers and hope to give her a proper burial one day. As of today, Becky has never been found and the case remains unsolved. Dale Duane Williams was born July 15, 1956. He would later marry Diana, and the couple lived in the small town of Nucla, Colorado, with their 2 daughters. He owned the Pro Body Shop in Nucla and is described as well-liked and very helpful to anyone that needed it. He was family-oriented, a great father, and a very hard worker. On May 27, 1999, he received a phone call while at work, and his friend Tom overheard part of the conversation and said the way he was talking, he believed he was talking to a female. When he hung up the phone, he said he was going to help a stranded motorist in Bedrock, which is about a 20 to 30-minute drive from the shop. However, he never mentioned exactly who he was going to help. His friend said that nothing else seemed out of the ordinary, and Dale said he would be back soon. This was strange because although he owned the body repair shop, he did not usually get calls regarding leaving work to help anyone with car problems. On the way there, he stopped by a local business in town to let a customer know when her vehicle would be ready. While he was there, he mentioned that he was en route to assist a stranded motorist. This was the last time Dale was ever seen. It wasn't unusual for Dale to work late into the night or even early morning hours. But when he didn't come home by later in the morning, his wife became worried and drove to her mother-in-law's house, and the two went looking for him. They first stopped by the shop, but Dale was nowhere to be found. Later that day, after no luck finding him, she would report him missing. Dale drove a white 1994 Ford pickup truck, which had the words Pro Body Shop stenciled on the sides. Many weeks would go by with no signs of Dale despite a large search party. Several weeks after he disappeared, a family was fishing in a local swimming hole when one of the boys' hooks got caught on something. He then swam out to get it and discovered that it was hooked on a truck. He pulled the dash cover through the window and it was labeled Pro Body Shop. The truck was in over 10 feet of water and was turned to the on position and the window was halfway down. It was removed and determined to be Dale's truck, but there was no signs of Dale. It was believed that someone most likely purposefully steered the truck into the water, which is why the window was halfway down and the truck in gear. The swimming hole is located between the San Miguel River and the Dolores River, and it could only be known to the locals because it is in such a secluded area. Some of his tools were found on the side of the road in the opposite direction where his truck was found. Investigators believe the suspect did this to throw off the investigation. A witness had reported seeing an individual matching Dale's description at approximately 6 p.m. on the day he disappeared at a market. Strangely, a neighbor claimed that Dale's truck was parked outside the Pro Body Shop about a couple hours after he left to assist the caller. However, investigators have never been able to confirm either sighting. There were several strange occurrences prior to Dale's disappearance. One of Dale's friends was being abusive to his wife, and she confided in Dale and his wife Diana. The couple then secretly helped her move out of state. When the former friend inquired about where his wife was, Dale refused to tell him and he became very angered. One of Dale's daughters worked at a local fast food restaurant, and on the day of his disappearance, an unidentified man walked into the restaurant asking for his daughter. She happened to be off work that day, so the man walked back outside and spoke on a payphone for about 15 minutes. Torn photographs of Dale and the former friend's family were found outside the Pro Body Shop shortly after his disappearance, along with scattered .22 caliber bullets. Also, Dale's wife ran a local video store in town and would find her husband's .22 caliber revolver inside a nighttime drop box several weeks later. Authorities believe that someone had broken into Dale's business and stole the photos and the gun. Investigators questioned the couple's former friend, but he denied any involvement in the burglaries. He had an alibi around the time Dale disappeared, and investigators ruled him out as a suspect after passing a polygraph test. Strangely, missing poster flyers were being removed by someone on a regular basis. His family decided to place a surveillance camera in the post office where the posters were repeatedly being removed. It was discovered that the person removing his missing poster signs was the former friend of Dale's who was angry at him. When questioned, he admitted to removing the signs, but was not charged with any crime. As of today, no one has been arrested for Dale's disappearance, and sadly, he remains missing and the case remains unsolved. Nathaniel Holmes was born November 5, 2000. When he was 8 years old, his parents divorced and his father Ben received custody of him and his 3 siblings. His family traveled the world, and Nathaniel enjoyed playing the bagpipes, hunting, and playing the online video game World of Warcraft. He lived in Arvada, Colorado with his father and siblings and was homeschooled. However, when he was 16 years old, he would enroll as a junior at Hidden Lake High School in Westminster, Colorado. The school focused on enrollment of students that struggled academically. He would eventually make friends, but his friends were considered a bad crowd, and his parents did not approve of them. Nathaniel was described as a quiet, shy, and calm person. On December 18, 2017, when his dad picked him up from school, it was obvious that Nathaniel had taken something like a drug and seemed very sedated and confused. Eventually, Nathaniel told his dad that he had taken some Xanax that he got from school and said it was his first time ever taking it and he didn't like the way it made him feel. That night, he and his siblings would have dinner at his mom's house as they did every Monday night. His dad had him spend the night with his mom that night so that she could keep an eye on him because he had to work and didn't want him to be alone. This was the first time he had stayed at his mom's house in several years. His mom searched his belongings and found more Xanax pills and confiscated them. The next morning, on December 19th, his mother dropped him off at school. Quickly after, he told the principal that he needed to speak to his friend Anthony about something important. But the principal told him no and told him to go to class and said he could talk to his friend at lunchtime. It is believed that Nathaniel at this point walked out of the school, called his mother from an unknown phone, and told her that she would not need to pick him up from school that day because a friend of his father's was going to pick him up and go get ice cream. However, this was not true. He was not reported missing by any of the staff at school, and this was the last day his family would see him. Investigators believe he left the school of his own free will, and his family believes his departure was spontaneous. They feared he might have met with foul play, and to this day have continued to search for him. Prior to his disappearance, he had never even spent the night at a friend's house. Strangely, it was later learned that Nathaniel may have been hanging out at a homeless shelter prior to his disappearance where teenagers often hung out. He had recently turned 17 when he disappeared, and he left all his belongings behind, including his money, iPad, and iPhone, which had been broken for over a month. It was noted that Nathaniel had recently changed his password to his iPad, which he had been using to communicate with his friends since his iPhone was broken. Investigators told his dad they were unable to get into his iPad or iPhone to search for clues due to Apple's security measures. He did have a car, but he had recently had a fender bender and his dad had taken it away. His friend that he wanted to talk to urgently that morning has come forward and states that he does not know why Nathaniel would have wanted to talk to him so badly, but has helped a lot in the search for him. Some of his missing flyer posters posted in Old Town have been vandalized, and they are unsure if there is anything suspicious behind this. He is listed as a missing runaway, but his family does not believe he ran away and then chose not to return. His family still continues to search for answers, and as of today, this case remains unsolved. Erinnae Thompson was born November 30th, 1998, to Lynette and Aaron. As a young girl, she lived with her father, Aaron Thompson, and his pregnant girlfriend, Shelley Lowe. She lived with 7 other children in the house in Aurora, Colorado, ranging in age from 6 to 15, which included Aarone's older brother, Shelley's teenage brother, and Shelley's 5 children. On November 14, 2005, Aaron notified authorities that Erinnae had disappeared. He said she got into an argument with Shelley over a cookie and ran away from home between 12:30 and 1:30 p.m. During this time, temperatures outside were below freezing and it was snowing. Police noted that Aaron and Shelley did not appear distressed over her disappearance, and neither of them had any suggestions as to where she might be. Shelley was upset, but only because the police were questioning the other children. Between 8 and 9 p.m., while officers were still searching the neighborhood for the child, Aaron said he was tired and wanted to go to bed. He agreed to a formal interview at police headquarters afterwards, but fell asleep on the stairs in his house between 10 and 1 a.m. Both Aaron and Shelley stopped cooperating with authorities the next day. Erinnae's mother, Lynette Thompson, lived in Detroit, Michigan when her daughter disappeared. She had not seen her since October 2001, 4 years prior to the night she was reported missing, and is not considered a suspect in the case. Within a day of Erinnae's disappearance, Lynette gave media interviews stating she disbelieved Aaron's story and believed Erinnae met with foul play. Lynette stated that Aarone and her brother had been born in Michigan and that Aaron and the children moved to Colorado in 2001. Lynette was supposed to go with them, but she had to be hospitalized, so she stayed behind. After she recovered, she planned to join them in their new home, but Aaron called her and told her not to come. After that, he refused to tell her where he and their children were living. Lynette admitted she struggled with drug addiction in the past, but says she is clean now, living in a homeless shelter. 3 days after Erinnae disappeared, investigators announced they did not believe she disappeared on November 14th. They theorized that instead, Erinnae had been murdered inside her home and had been dead for some time before her disappearance was reported, perhaps as long as a year and a half. The Thompson-Lowe children were all taken into protective custody, as was Shelley's baby daughter after she was born. Authorities cited abuse, neglect, and poor living conditions as the reasons. After that, Aaron and Shelley were allowed supervised visitations only. The first time the Thompson Lowe children were interviewed, they supported their parents' story that Erinnae ran away. They told investigators what her favorite food and color was and said she had dressed up as a witch for Halloween. However, after they were taken into foster care, the children recanted their statements. They said Shelley had told them to lie and they had not actually seen Erinnae in over a year. Shelley's brother, Rajon Russell, who had moved into the home in August 2004, said he had never seen her. Both Aaron and Shelley were named as persons of interest in Erinnae's disappearance and her presumed death, and their home was designated as a crime scene. Police stated the couple also refused to take lie detector tests. Investigators interviewed over 450 people, searched the Thompson home, and dug up the yard. False identification cards, including driver's license, were found in the home, but there was no evidence as to Erinnae's whereabouts. Interestingly, Erinnae was reported missing just hours after a social worker visited the home. The family had been receiving housing subsidy from a charitable organization, and the social worker was supposed to determine if they were still eligible. She spent 45 to 60 minutes in the home and inspected every room, but did not see Erinnae anywhere. Erinnae's name was not listed on the paperwork for the home, but neither was the name of her older brother. The next day, Shelley called the social worker and tried to convince her she had seen Erinnae, but the social worker refused to change her previous statement. Erinnae had never attended any school in the Aurora area or been registered as a homeschooled student. Shelley reportedly told one individual that she had been unable to register Erinnae at school because the child's birth certificate and immunization records had been lost, but it was later determined that Erinnae's father and stepmother did in fact have a birth certificate for her. She last received medical attention in May 2002 when she was treated for an abscessed tooth. When her father reported her missing, he said she was 7 years old, but she would have actually been 6. The picture he provided was from the summer of 2002, and he said the family had no more recent photographs. Weeks before Erinnae was reported missing, Aaron requested that a non-profit foundation help provide Christmas presents for the children. However, he did not list Erinnae on the application form. There was also no toothbrush and no mattress in the house for her. Aaron and Shelley said she slept with Shelley's daughter, Kayla, but Kayla denied it and none of Erinnae's DNA could be found on the bedding. Shelley's former boyfriend told police that Shelley told him that she had stopped breathing in the bathtub. Shelley then attempted to revive her but was unable to. She denied being responsible for her death and stated she had simply died suddenly and no one had done anything to cause it. Shelley allegedly stated she and Aaron had concealed Erinnae's death and buried her body in a field far away because the child had been abused and had a suspicious scar on her body as a result, and Shelley was afraid the other children would be removed from the home. Shelley's friend Tabitha Graves also gave a similar account. She said in the summer or fall of 2004, Shelley was riding in the car with her when she suddenly said Erinnae had died in her sleep months before. She said she and Aaron decided not to call 911 after they discovered the body, and Aaron took the body away in his Ford Expedition and came back a long time later without her. After Shelley told her this story, Tabitha began tape recording their telephone conversations and would later turn the tapes over to the police. In the conversations, Shelley referred to Erinnae in the past tense and said she would have Aaron place flowers on the child's grave. She repeatedly urged Tabitha not to tell the police what happened and expressed fears of going to jail and losing her children. Tabitha noted Shelley did not like Erinnae and had trouble disciplining her. Velma Belzer, Shelley's aunt, remembered a phone call she got from Shelley in the summer of 2003. Shelley asked her what to do if a child stops breathing and said either she or Aaron were going to discipline his daughter and she had passed out. Velma advised Shelley to call 911. A couple of days later, when she asked Shelley about the child's condition, Shelley reportedly replied, "I took care of it." In May 2006, a grand jury was convened to investigate Erinnae's disappearance. That same month, Shelley died suddenly at the age of 33 from heart disease. Shelley had maintained her innocence in Erinnae's case until her death. She was never interviewed by police because she refused to speak to them. Aaron continued to maintain his innocence in Erinnae's disappearance. In May 2007, Aaron was indicted on nearly 60 counts, the most serious of which was child abuse resulting in death. That charge carried a maximum sentence of 48 years to life in prison. Authorities believe Erinnae died sometime between May 2002 and August 2004, probably during 2003. It was during 2003 that the couple told the other children that she had moved to Michigan to live with her mother. Shortly afterwards, all of Erinnae's belongings were placed in the basement. None of the children in the family saw or heard anything from her again. Her siblings told investigators that before she went missing, Erinnae was repeatedly beaten and kept in a closet for hours at a time, often as punishment for bedwetting. She was also denied proper nourishment and medical attention. All the children stated they were beaten with a belt, a baseball bat, and other objects. The children claimed at least one of them was beaten every day, and several of them bear scars from the abuse. Shelley's son Andrew stated that he heard Aaron beating Erinnae in the basement one night. Erinnae was screaming, then suddenly the screaming stopped and Andrew heard Aaron swear. Andrew never saw Erinnae again. A day or two later, he asked his mother where Erinnae was, and Shelley told him she had moved to Michigan. Andrew said he noticed a bad smell in the basement a few days later, which lasted for several weeks. He said Shelley began attending church and saying nightly prayers a short time after Erinnae disappeared, which was uncharacteristic of her previous behavior. The children testified against Aaron at his trial in the fall of 2009, repeating their stories of abuse. Aaron's defense acknowledged Erinnae was dead and Aaron had helped cover up her death, but they said Shelley actually killed her and Aaron only helped her hide this fact. Aaron was convicted of 31 out of the 55 charges against him, including child abuse resulting in death in Erinnae's case. He was acquitted of 22 charges, mainly those related to his alleged abuse of the other children. In November 2009, he was sentenced to 114 years in prison. Prior to his sentencing, the judge gave him several chances to reveal where his daughter's body was buried before she sentenced him, but each time he just shook his head and said no. He quickly appealed his sentence and continues to attempt to do so. The children were all placed in foster care or with relatives. Sadly, as of today, the location of Erinnae's body remains a mystery. Dylan Levi Bennett was born in 1992, and Austen Jean Bennett was born in 1996. Their mother, Mary, was a single mom who was originally from Oklahoma but would move to Colorado Springs later in life. In the late 90s, she was suffering from mental illnesses and was reported to be neglecting the boys and their younger brother, James. Because of the mental illnesses she suffered from, she would voluntarily put the boys in foster care. They unfortunately went to live in the home of Edward and Linda Bryant as foster children in Monument, Colorado. Their mother visited the boys once a week and saw they were generally happy and well taken care of. Thinking she was doing the right thing, she allowed the Bryants to adopt the boys just months later in March of 2000. Austen was only 4 years old at the time and Dylan was 7. The Bryants collected nearly $1,800 a month from the El Paso County Department of Human Services for their care. Not long after being adopted, the Bryants changed Dylan's first name to Edward after his adopted father, which was not what Dylan wanted. He then began to have behavior problems and began lashing out. They also changed the spelling of Austen's first name from Austin to Austen and changed his middle name to Eugene after the adopted father. The boys then began asking their mom when they would be able to come home, but they were legally adopted and she had lost her legal rights to them. Soon after, the Bryants no longer allowed their mother to be in contact with the children. Colorado law states that once a child is adopted, social workers are no longer required to check up on them. This would eventually lead to their demise. They moved to Texas in 2005. 6 years later, one of the boys' adopted brothers and 2 other foster children, adults at this point, came forward to police and reported that they had not seen Austen since before the family moved to Texas, possibly as early as the same year he was adopted. Also, the other children in the family had been forbidden to talk about Dylan and Austen. According to one of the former foster children, Austen was beaten, denied food several times a week as a form of punishment, and locked in a trunk in the garage for days at a time. He was also wrapped so tightly in a blanket that he couldn't move and struggled to breathe. Another of the foster children said Austen had told him that he had been locked in a trunk and shocked with a taser. He said he moved in with the Bryants a year and a half after Dylan and Austen, and that he had never met Dylan and had been told the boy had been sent to live with relatives in Arizona. He also said that he believed his adopted parents might have actually killed Austen. When questioned, Linda at first claimed the children were living with her, then claimed they had gone to visit their biological mother in Oklahoma. She then admitted they hadn't lived with her in years. She stated that a therapist had suggested that Austen be disciplined by being wrapped in the blankets. Linda and Edward Eugene stated both boys had run away from home, but they gave different accounts. Linda said both ran away in May 2003, and Edward said Dylan ran away in 2001, and Austen in 2005. However, neither one ever reported the boys missing. Investigators determined that Austen was enrolled at Monument Academy Charter School until August 2003, when he was withdrawn, supposedly to be homeschooled. They could find no school records or medical records for either Edward or Austen after 2003. Linda tried to make it look like the boys were still living with her and even printed photographs of other children off the internet, displayed them in her home, and told the other adopted children that they were pictures of Austen and Dylan. The Bryants separated sometime after moving to Texas in 2005. They filed for bankruptcy in 2007 and listed $126,000 in adoption benefits as part of their income. They would also list 8 children, including Austen and Edward, as dependents. They still had 5 children in their care by 2011, a 6th was in prison, and the 7th was in the military out of state. In February 2011, the Bryants were arrested and charged with multiple counts of theft, conspiracy, forgery, and attempting to influence a public official. They had collected approximately $175,000 in benefit payments for the children's care after the children were no longer living in their home. Edward claimed he had no knowledge of the family's receiving of benefits for the children. Linda admitted she had deliberately covered up their disappearances in order to keep the payments coming. Linda was charged with 148 felony counts, and Edward was charged with 13 felonies. But none of the charges were related to the actual disappearance of the children or the alleged abuse of them, but for Medicaid fraud only. When they were charged, the other 5 minor children of theirs became wards of the state of Texas. In January 2012, Linda pled guilty to 54 felonies, 4 counts of theft, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit theft, and 48 counts of attempting to influence a public servant. In March, she was sentenced to 42 years in prison for welfare fraud. In April, Edward pled guilty to 5 similar felony charges, and 19 of the other accounts were dismissed. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for welfare fraud. Some of Linda's relatives were told that Dylan had gone to Arizona to help care for her 82-year-old father. Others were told he had been sent to a boot camp for bad behavior. One relative testified at the sentencing that Linda told her Austen was sent to an insane asylum in Colorado. One of her adopted children told investigators she asked him to have a friend come over and pretend to be Dylan if a caseworker ever came by. El Paso County Sheriff's deputy told the court that another relative had lodged a complaint over Dylan's disappearance with the El Paso County Department of Human Services. The detective said that for some reason a caseworker was never sent. Police believe that the oldest boy, now legally named Edward Dylan Bryant, has been missing since 2001 and Austen Bryant since 2003, but neither of the Bryants have been charged in the boys' disappearances. Their mother still seeks answers, but extensive searches in Colorado have turned up no indication of their whereabouts. Authorities believe they may no longer be alive, and as of today, this case remains unsolved.